Industry's been warning about Canada's project labor shortage for over a decade. The government has spent billions on it. And yet the shortage is worse now than it was when the warnings first started. That's not a coincidence. Let's quickly review what we're hearing from people. Executives are saying that we need more immigration. The feds are saying that we need more training. The provinces say we need more of both. They've all been saying this for 10 years. How is that going? By the end of this video, I want you to have a different diagnosis of why Canada keeps running out of skilled people, two pressures arriving that nobody's pricing in, and what has to change. I've worked on the regulator side and the operator side, and I can see why at times the two sides seem to talk past each other. Many workforce papers get the diagnosis wrong because they've only sat on one side of the aisle. This is what I keep hearing from people. Unemployment is around 7%, so there should be a lot of labor available. Let's just take the people who aren't working and get them to work. We also keep hearing that there's all this money flooding to apprenticeships and we can just bring in more qualified people. It all seems so simple, doesn't it? The unemployment rate tells you nothing about whether a remote LNG site in Kitimat or a potash mine in Saskatchewan can hire qualified industrial electricians. If we look closely at the data, the trade's unemployment to vacancy ratio in 2024 was 2 to 1. Utilities, the sector that powers every other project, sat at 1.7% unemployment. That's functional full employment even as unemployment rises elsewhere. There's no slack in this market, so the generic unemployment rate is a distraction. Canada doesn't have a workforce problem. It has a volatility problem that shows up as a workforce problem. It's difficult to train your workforce when there's uncertainty about the project. Federal training isn't wrong. The 2026 apprenticeship package awarded $3.4 billion over 5 years. This is real money. The feds have also created an express entry for skilled trades. The people running these programs are doing serious work. The issue is that training and immigration are necessary but not sufficient when the demand signal is broken. And yet, we're treating them as sufficient. Look at apprenticeship completion. Statistics Canada has stated that only 16% of apprenticeships complete on time. That number only increases to 36% at double the program duration. That's not a marketing problem, that's a structural problem. Apprenticeships need a stable employer placement over 4 years. Yet a major project gets announced, it creates a workforce plan, and then lo and behold, it gets delayed for 18 months. The apprentices lose their placements, contractors cut their intake, the entire pipeline breaks. Multiply that by every project that's been announced and then delayed over the past decade. That's why training money isn't producing journey persons at the rate that the numbers suggest. You can't train your way out of a market where a project can't rationally commit to a 4-year pipeline. On top of that broken signal, two pressures are arriving. Each one is big enough on its own, but together they're a major squeeze. First, the retirement squeeze. BuildForce Canada projects 270,000 construction retirements by 2034, against a need of 380,000 new workers. That's a deficit of 110,000. And this is demographic. It's coming whether Canada approves another project or not. Second, and this is the one that's a bit underappreciated, federal regulators that approve your projects aren't staffed to deliver what's being promised. For example, the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada plans for roughly 600 FTEs this year. But by 2028, that number is expected to be reduced to 203. 600 to 203 in 2 years. Now, hold that against what the government is promising. 2-year decisions on major assessments. One project, one window. A record number of new mines and other infrastructure projects. So the agency that has to deliver most of that program is scheduled to lose 2/3 of its staff exactly when the workload peaks. And it's not just the Impact Assessment Agency. Other federal agencies and their provincial counterparts are all on time-limited funding in a fiscal environment where governments are cutting public servants. So here's the critical point. Your schedule depends on the regulator's capacity to review your file. They're promising you a faster review while quietly cutting the institutions that have to deliver it. Now let's focus on what is working, because it's not all bad. BHP Jansen in Saskatchewan. About 5,500 construction roles at peak. BHP partnered with Carleton Trail College to build the Potash Academy, an industry-led training institute that started cohorts before peak construction hit. But that works not because BHP is special. It works because they had certainty in timing and scale and approvals to justify investment in a multi-year training program. Where certainty exists, training works. Where it doesn't, training is an asymmetric investment that a lot of people simply don't want to take. Structural reform won't fix everything. The retirement cliff is demographic. It's happening whether we do anything or we don't. Housing in remote corridors is a completely separate issue. One reform isn't going to fix everything. I'm arguing that the structural problem, though, is underappreciated, and it determines where everything else lands. Let's look at two reforms, both implementable, both with precedence. First, tie federal training investment to corridor-specific demand signals. The Janssen model is the template. The $3.4 billion should preferentially flow to corridor-based programs co-funded by proponents with real timeline certainty. Reserve seats with acceptance tied to the labor ramp-up. The feds could start by identifying 4 to 6 infrastructure corridors using the existing major projects inventory and publishing a framework by the end of next year. The trade-off might be that some seats sit empty if there's a project delay, but the cost of unused seats is small compared to the cost overruns if you can't staff up. Second, staff the regulators ahead of the wave, not behind it. The 2-year decision target, one project, one review, the major projects office are real commitments, yet the agencies that deliver them are scheduled to be cut starting next year. This needs to be fixed. These agencies need stable multi-year funding tied to actual project inventory. The major projects office is well funded, but all the core agencies doing the actual reviews need the same treatment. If cost recovery is a long-term answer, fix the model, because right now it collects only a fraction of its costs. Either fix it or find a long-term funding model. Doing neither lands a 2-year promise on agencies without the staff to keep it. Canada's workforce conversation is stuck on the wrong layer. More training money on top of a volatile market produces the same outcomes of the past decade. More immigration on top of a market where the demand signal is broken produces workers who leave after 3 years. The proponents who figure this out will stop asking, how do we get more welders? And they'll start asking, how do we sequence our project to create the stability to make the training program worth it? The ones who don't will keep being surprised by a thin labor market. If you're a proponent watching your own labor ramp collide with the squeeze I've just described, I'd be curious what you're seeing on the ground. Please feel free to reach out or leave a comment below. To everybody else, thank you for watching.